Hey there, I'm a longtime user of Duolingo and I've enjoyed using it, but there's also this feeling as I've used it that I wanted to escape it and get off of it as quickly as possible. The languages I've studied the longest, French and Spanish, I felt like I had studied them for years and I wasn't where I wanted to be with it. I wanted to stop using Duolingo and just start using my language. Is that possible? Let me tell you that yes, it is possible. Whatever language you're studying, even the most difficult ones like Japanese, Arabic, Chinese, you can get off within 6 months or less, and probably a lot faster for languages like Spanish and French. So stick around. I'm going to give you the 5 secrets that I use to get off of Duolingo and to start using my language more. I first used Duolingo back in 2014, and then the owl looked very different. But every now and then I see or hear comments of people saying like, I've used Duolingo for a year or 2 years, and I can barely have a conversation or barely form a sentence. On the other hand, I see people who say like, I use Duolingo and I finished the Spanish course or the French course in 2 months. And considering how long those courses are, it seems like, how is that possible? How do people go through it so quickly while other people are struggling to barely even get anywhere? What's going on there? One thing to remember is that Duolingo's main goal is not to teach you a language. It's to get you using the app regularly. Teaching a language is the secondary goal, but their main mission is to have you engaged and kind of addicted to the app. And that wasn't what I wanted. My goal was to learn the language, and that had nothing to do with the app. I didn't care about points or gems or whatever they're called. I didn't care about a streak. I just wanted to learn the language and escape the app. If you're more focused on leaderboards and points or whatever, then maybe this isn't the video for you. But if you're just trying to learn the language and that's your main mission, then stick around. I suggest you make using your language in real life your primary goal. And by using a language, I mean all the elements that come with a language. Speaking a language and having conversations with others. It means listening to the language and understanding what you're hearing, whether it's a person talking to you or music, podcasts, audiobooks, whatever. It means writing your language. It means watching videos and stories and being able to follow them. And it means thinking in the language, something people often forget. Don't get me wrong, Duolingo is very good at a lot of these and getting you started, but I think of it as training wheels, and nobody wants to use training wheels forever. They want to get rid of them as soon as possible and start riding a bike for real. So to let you do that, I'm going to give you these 5 really powerful things that if you just do one of them, you're going to improve. But if you do all 5, you're going to escape the app and really accelerate your learning progress. You'll notice as I show Duolingo that I'm using the Super Duolingo, which is the paid version. Now, if you're just using the free version, it is possible to use some of these techniques, but I think you may find that a little challenging because they've made using the free version so bad. You can use also these techniques though with other teaching methods and other material that you can find free on the internet. I'm just saying that to use these techniques that I'm suggesting as quickly as possible on Duolingo, it's much easier with Super Duolingo. So the first element, which a lot of people neglect, is health. And the reason this is so important is because learning is a physical process that happens in the brain. The more efficiently you can do that, the better and quicker you're going to learn. The key elements of this are rest and diet. And with rest, this is a very broad category. There's books like Why We Sleep. You can read more about it. What it comes down to is that memory consolidation really happens during rest periods, especially deep sleep, but not just deep sleep. And what that constitutes for individuals really varies. Some people need 6 hours, some people need 10 hours, some people like to break up their sleep into what's called polyphasic sleep, which is where they sleep a little in the afternoon. But really it just kind of depends on you. Think about your own patterns and needs. Really, are you getting enough sleep? Because if you're not, it's going to slow down your progress. Also, take a lot of rest breaks through the day, which can be just closing your eyes. It can be meditating. It can be I've been using lately binaural beats. You can read more about brain waves, but basically what it means is that your brain functions in these wave-like patterns and they can be controlled using lights or sounds. You can find on YouTube plenty of free programs to entrain your brain into different brain states. The key ones that seem to be relevant are the deeper sleep states, which are, alpha, theta, and delta, but also a lot of research lately about gamma waves, which are really active and really helpful for consolidating memories. So I think play with this and see what helps you. But I think being aware of brainwaves is important, and you can use these to rest. So a lot of times in the afternoon, which is when a lot of people slump, is a good time to use these. And you can experiment, either slowing your brainwaves down or trying gamma waves. Either way, though, just shutting your eyes is helpful. With diet, I think it comes down to make sure you're eating a healthy diet that has a lot of fruits and vegetables. But one thing that I've kind of been playing with is lion's mane mushrooms, which seem to affect memory and improve memory. The only kind of caveat I would say with that is that they seem to, if I eat too much of them, give me a headache. Be a little cautious, but play around with it and see if it helps you learn. The next key element to escape using Duolingo as quickly as possible and finish your course is to stop using it in small bite-sized chunks. That's great, in terms of keeping things in the brain. That's very helpful. If you can do something every day for a long time in just small amounts, that's really good. But it's very bad for finishing a course and learning a language quickly, which I think most people want to do. You're watching this video because you want to finish your course as quickly as possible. The key way to do that is to do a few things. One is to not just do one lesson a day. It means doing more than one lesson, usually like 20 minutes worth of, which can be like 4 or 5 lessons at least, at the very minimum. But it also means to test up regularly. This is huge. You need to test regularly and try to make jumps, because that'll allow you to finish your course in a short amount of time. You need to test up regularly. It's so helpful. And a lot of people underestimate what they're capable of. But if you do find that you are struggling with your course, you'd I can't do that. It's my language is Japanese and it's just too difficult. There's no way I can do these jumps. Well, I'm gonna say that yes, if you're just using Duolingo, you probably won't be able to test up. But I'm gonna give you some helpful hints later on that will let you do that. It's not about necessarily just beating your head against the course. That's not the most efficient way of learning a language. But if you're regularly getting 80 to 100% on your regular lessons, then you need to start testing up. One key thing is that there's a difference in the way that you test up on the desktop and the mobile versions. I tend to use the mobile version to test up because you get more opportunities to fail. I think the desktop version may be slightly easier. I still prefer the mobile version. I think I've been able to test up a lot more quickly. I'll use my iPad, and it's very important that I have the keyboard of the language that I'm testing up. This will allow you to get predictive hints. And you may be like, I don't want hints, I want to learn my language. But I'm telling you, if you can get to a higher level, it will be more difficult when you first get there, but then you can practice with it a little more, and when you feel comfortable, test up again. Don't hesitate to test up. Do it anytime you can. Some people really want to master a level. They want to get legendary on all the modules. Don't do that. Just focus on getting ahead. It's much better to get to a higher level that has more vocabulary that you're not familiar with, and then start becoming comfortable with that than lingering on these lower levels forever. There are even times when I'm really close to testing up, but I can see I'm not quite going to make it. If I get one wrong, I'm not going to make it. And I cheat. Yes, I said it. I cheat. And I'm not suggesting that you cheat forever, but I'm saying that every now and then, if there's just a small difference between getting to the next level and cheating, do it. Just use Google Translate or whatever and get that one problem right, and then move ahead. And then, a lot of times if I do have to cheat, when I get to the next level, I will force myself to do all the modules manually. Okay, so testing up is a huge part of finishing your course as quickly as possible. But I said that some courses, maybe your style of learning, you find that when you use Duolingo, you're not able to test up. You just don't know the material, whatever. And the key to getting around that is not to just do Duolingo over and over, but to use other material and really think about these two boxes for the type of ways that you're using your language. One is input and one is output. Input is going to be what you hear, what you read, that you take in from the outside environment. Output is going to be what you create, like your speech and what you write primarily, and also what you think. People often forget that. Thinking about these two big boxes will help you, because when you're learning, there's different theories and practices about what people do, but I find that it's very important to get a lot of input when you're first starting. My personal style is I like to read and I like to hear a lot of conversations. So what I suggest you do with your language is that you download a lot of different audio, particularly conversations if you can find them. And on YouTube there are a lot. There's websites like the 101, I forget what they're called, like for example with like French, it'd be like French Pod 101, and they have a lot of conversations. Download like 2 hours of that and just listen to it every day and start internalizing it. Get a lot of different sources, a lot of different material, but I find conversations are most effective for audio. For reading, read whatever you can, but I find that comics and nonfiction are better than prose fiction, because with comics you get clues, you get hints about what you're reading, and with nonfiction you can kind of lose the storyline and you could still kind of follow what they're talking about. One source for nonfiction reading that pretty much every language has available is Wikipedia. There are over 300 different versions of Wikipedia in just about every language that you might want to learn. So read every day. It doesn't have to be long, especially when you're getting started. Just read at least 5 minutes every day, even if you don't understand it. Pick an article that interests you and follow it as best you can. Another multilingual option is Khan Academy. I find that I enjoy reading and learning on there and also watching their videos. Anything that really interests you, it's really going to be up to you and your interests. And I'll put some links down below for some more materials. Really, you just have to find something that interests you, even if you don't understand it completely. Be excited anytime you find a word that you know already, and then eventually you'll start to build up to phrases and sentences, and eventually you'll get more than 80%, and it'll be interesting because it's what already interests you. Also important, use the last 10 minutes or so before you sleep to practice your language, either listening to conversations or reading or both. There's a lot of research about what you do before you sleep really solidifying in your brain and memory. The other element that I suggest you incorporate to some degree and more as you go along with your language is your output. And this can be both your speaking, your writing, and your thinking. All these are ways of creating and using your language productively. At some point you may want to find a conversation partner. I think that's very helpful. There's websites like Conversation Exchange, there's Facebook groups for language exchange where you can say what language you want to learn. But I think a lot of people find that very intimidating, especially when they're a beginner. So there are other ways to still create and be practicing your output. One way is to translate. I suggest when you start to feel a little comfortable with your language, every day, hand write. There's something about writing by hand that's different from typing, but hand write a translation. I just translate like a magazine paragraph every day. It doesn't have to be very long. It doesn't matter if it's an easy paragraph or a difficult one. It gives me practice. The key thing with this is that you just use the vocabulary you have as best you can. So if you don't know a word, just try and force yourself to use your present vocabulary and translate that as best you can. And then I'll use like Google Translate or Bing to translate it into the language, and I'll write it out again in the corrected version. As you improve, you may find that your translation and like Google Translate's translation aren't identical, and that's fine because there's more than one way to translate something. But especially when you're a beginner and you don't know the words, just copying their translation is a good way to get you started. But force yourself to make the attempt first and then copy theirs. Also, when you become more advanced, thinking in your language is very helpful. Another thing that you can do is write out flashcards and label as many things in your house as possible. And then the next day, take those flashcards and see if you can find everywhere in the house. It's not that difficult after a day or two. The key thing with your output though is to really focus on your content gaps and where you need in your life and your language speaking to find the words that you need and the phrases that you need. Figure out what you don't know how to say that you want to say, and then figure out how to say it. The final key element that you have to be aware of is time. This is a very big topic and there's no way I can tackle everything about it, but let me give you some clues that I find very helpful. One, make your language your first and last thing that you do every day. So first thing in the morning, just start using your language, either reading it, listening to it, writing it, whatever. And same thing before bed, last thing that you do. The next thing, I talked a lot about rest. Use whatever time you have. If you have an hour, use that efficiently. Like I would say if I had an hour, I would do a half hour sometime in the morning and then take a rest and then sometime in the afternoon or evening, another half hour. Spread it out throughout the day so that you come back to it. I find that 2 hours is really what is going to allow you to really improve in anything. So you may not want to do 2 hours for the rest of your life of a language, but if you can do 2 hours for like 2 months and then, ease off a little, that's going to be very helpful. So I suggest, figure out, can you do 2 hours a day? And you may have to stop watching TV in English. You may have to stop doing some other garbage, or you may have to start using the time that you're doing other things like washing the dishes or shaving or something to improve your language, and just have audio playing in the background. Just start thinking about how you use your time. If you have a commute in the morning, use that time. Obviously, some days are busier than others, and you may only get like 10 minutes in on some days, and just don't beat yourself up if you have the flu and you don't feel like doing anything. Just use your time as efficiently as possible. If you're jogging or you're at work and you don't really need to use your brain, start playing audio in those times, because supposedly you need 10,000 hours to learn something really well. I don't know how true that is, and it seems like a very rough guideline, but I think the point is with languages is that it takes a long time. Find the right balance between something that's like just teaching you versus immersion. I think both are important, and a lot of times I'll just extract the audio from a YouTube video of a regular drama or something. I'll just take out 10 minutes of conversation and listen to it without even understanding what I'm listening to. The point though is that simply just spending 2 hours on Duolingo is not going to be as efficient, I find, as listening to a conversation over and over and over, and reading very helpful that will allow you to improve in a way that just doing Duolingo isn't going to help. Plus, I find that just doing Duolingo isn't very satisfying in the long run. It's just kind of random sentences, and there are characters and there are storylines, but they're very scattered, and I don't find it as enjoyable as like reading a magazine or a book. Now, I said with some languages like Japanese and Chinese, you're not going to be able to read right away. In fact, you have to study a lot of characters before you can read it all. Do what you can and use maybe like a book on reading Japanese if you want to improve your reading, rather than relying just on Duolingo. I said that doing 2 or 3 hours a day will help you improve much faster. Here's the good news though. You may need that much to improve, but you don't need that much to maintain. You can maintain a language with just 10 minutes a day. Now you may wonder, do you need to do legendary and really flesh out the course as much as possible and really do it over and over until it's like clockwork? I personally just don't want to spend all that time on Duolingo. My goal is to get to the highest level, start learning the material. Okay, I don't need to master it. And then what allows me to get excited is to escape to material like books and comics and movies and podcasts that I actually care about, that will really engage me and keep me going with the language. If I feel I get about 75% of what I'm reading, then I don't need Duolingo. I'm definitely at that point with Spanish. I'm probably close to like 90% of what I read. I understand, no problem. I get the ideas, and every now and then I'll look up a word. I think that's what you should aim for. Even if you finish the highest levels of their most complete courses like Spanish and French, you're not going to be totally fluent in a language. I hate to break it to you. There's going to be plenty of vocabulary that is not available on Duolingo, and that you're just going to have to explore on your own, reading and watching films and talking to people. But don't let that discourage you. Think about your native language that you grew up speaking, probably English if you're watching this video. With me learning English, I learned it until I was like 4, and then I went to school for another 12 years studying English, and then I went on to study 4 more years of English in college. That's a lot of English. However much we tout the benefits of being a child to learn with that neuroplasticity that allows them to learn a language really fast, they still make mistakes with languages, and they're learning for years and years. How do they do that? By exposing themselves to the authentic language as much as possible, to a wide variety of different sources, talking to different people, watching different shows, hearing things, reading things from a lot of different authors. You too can do that, and it's not going to happen by staying on Duolingo forever. So again, I encourage you to get off of the app and finish the material as quickly as possible and move on to more natural forms of the language. It will benefit your learning more, and it will be more exciting and enjoyable. What about you? Do you have any exciting tips that helped you finish your Duolingo course as quickly as possible? Let me know in the comments below. And let me know what challenges you're still having if you are not able to finish your course on Duolingo. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope to see you in future videos about language.